Thank you for staying with us. The world is still mourning the death of the Bishop of Rome, Pope Francis, after the Vatican made the announcement in a video statement. According to the video, Pope Francis died around 7:35 a.m. Monday morning. This is coming after he returned to the Vatican less than a month ago after a 5-week hospitalization for life-threatening double pneumonia. Pope Francis's last public appearance was for an Easter Sunday blessing at the Vatican's St. Peter's Square in front of delighted crowds after a brief meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has joined world leaders to mourn the death of the Pope. President Tinubu described him as an instrument of peace who deeply embodied the message of Christ, love for God and love for humanity. Well, joining us for this conversation, we have columnist and host Samuel Mashaye here, and we also have via Zoom from Katsina, Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Katsina, Gerald Musa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's begin with you, Bishop. There's been an outpouring of eulogy for the Pope who just passed, and a lot of persons have reflected on his time as Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. What would you remember him for, and what does his passing mean for the Catholic Church?
Well, I think Pope Francis will be remembered for many things that he taught us. He will be remembered for the legacy of sustaining the environment. When he wrote the encyclical Laudato Si, it was about the environment. He will also be remembered for his simplicity, and he lived a life in accordance with his patron Saint Francis, whose name he chose, the life of simplicity. We can tell without doubt that his life exemplifies the words of Micah chapter 6, verse 8, which says, "Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God."
That's right.
Yes. Many people have said many things about Pope Francis, that he's humble, he did this and he did that. But some people, some conservatives are happy that he's going. But don't you think that in the final analysis, his tenure was gestural rather than fundamental in terms of changing things? He never changed anything. He was just going about saying, I love gays, but he didn't change the law on gays. I love women, but women cannot teach or preach in the court. I love migrants, but the migrants keep pouring in. I can baptize the child of a gay person, but not almost like there is a movement, there is a motion, but there's no movement. What do you think has happened? I called him earlier an angel of disobedience that created an atmosphere of shaking the place, but it's one thing to shake the place and another thing to bring it down.
Okay, I think if we are to look at the years of his papacy, the 12 years of his papacy, we'll notice that he took us into what we may describe as the revolution of common sense, taking us to the basics, especially about the simplicity of the church. And the pastoral approach he taught us was about, was that which was linked to that of St. Augustine, which says to us, hate the sin, but love the sinner. It is that same approach that tells us, do not throw out the bath water and the baby. So he says, inasmuch as the church does not support homosexuality, inasmuch as his church does not support divorce, but we must not treat those who are divorced and those who are living or having same-sex marriages as people who are are despicable or people who should not come close to the church. He teaches us an approach that says, in as much as they are sinners, we must adopt the attitude of Jesus, who says to us, I have come not for those who are well, but for the sick. I have come not for the righteous, but for sinners. So he takes us back into those basic teachings of Jesus, that we must respect even the sinner. It is through love and respect that we can talk about the conversion of those who have veered off.
But don't you think that what he has done is just to tease the so-called progressives, because he's giving them nothing? He's not giving the gays anything. He's not giving the divorced anything. You know that it was because of the issue of divorce that we have the Anglican Church today, when Henry VIII, you know, wanted to marry somebody else, that they formed the Anglican Church. So we are still where we were centuries past.
Yes, I think he may not have given the gays and the divorced anything, but what he taught us is the approach towards them, that we must not be too harsh with them. We must not treat them as people who are hated. We must not treat them as people who have no place in the church, but we must welcome them. We must open the doors for them. It is only then that you begin to talk about conversion.
Exactly, but we know that he was Pope for 12 years, so definitely people would criticize and some people will love what he has done. But what would you say has been some of the most pivotal things he did for the Catholic Church while he was Pope? And also I was reading somewhere when someone said, even in the Bible, God is against homosexuality. So please take us through that, because some of people think that he really agreed with that. So I just want you to take us through that quickly.
Okay, he could not change the teachings of the church nor the teachings of Scripture. You know, if you're talking about the pivotal things that he did for the church, let us remember that he brought about a church, or he reminded us that we must consult. He reminds us that everyone is a member of the church. His concept of synodality, you know, the synod on synodality was about, you know, bringing all facets of the church, all segments of the church together. That decisions are not only meant for one person. Decisions are not only left for the hierarchy, but the church, as he describes it, is a journey that we go together.
Well, interesting. So the thing now is that there will now be race for another pope, which will be, you know, they have to go through different, you know, ways of choosing the next pope. So a lot of people are in line. They even say that maybe Africans might be in line as well. But is it the question for me here is it now time for us Africans to be the next pope? Are we qualified to be the next pope?
Yes, of course. Anyone from any part of the world is qualified. Remember that Pope Francis himself was the first pope from Latin America.
That's right.
So it was something that has never been done before. And if a pope could emerge from Latin America, it means that a pope could emerge from Asia. A pope could as well emerge from Africa.
All right, so what are the qualities you'd like to see in his successor, now that we are already racing towards having the next pope?
Well, there are many qualities that we expect to see in the successor of Pope Francis. And one is sticking to the scriptures and to the moral teachings of the church. And also recognizing that the world is moving and we have to continually address the critical questions that are out in the world today. There are so many things that are begging for our attention. Inasmuch as we do not go with the world, as St. Augustine would say, we are in the world, but not of the world. So we expect us to see a pope who has that principle in mind, that tells us we're in the world, but we are not of the world. The gospel still remains ever the same. And we expect a pope who would emphasize the basic teachings of the gospel.
Okay, so if I will...
They have said that there are so many conservatives in the Catholic Church who were very, very uncomfortable with the actions of the departed Pope, and they have also said that this is a synodal approach in which it did not only get the popes together, but also got people who were not even, the bishops together and cardinals together, but also brought people who were less to sit in fashions in which they sat close to each other, and it demystified the decision making. In fact, the fundamental thing is that people believe that it demystified the papacy, especially the position of the Pope, because I grew up with the people arguing about the infallibility of the Pope, and he has come to say, no, the Pope is a human being like any other person. How do you think this will affect the mystique of that position going forward, especially as they try to pick another Pope?
Yeah, I think, we're talking about the pivotal role he played, and you have mentioned one of them. He demystified, the position of the Pope by his simple way of living, by not going to live in the palace, by choosing a humble place in which he lived. These are some of the ways of demystifying that position. And I believe that whoever is coming as Pope will build on the legacy that Pope Francis has left for us.
Yeah, that's a follow-up, sorry. In the movie Conclave, there was one scene in which somebody said the problem that the church has to contend with is the whole idea of certainty. And that when there is certainty, there is no mystery. And when there is no mystery, what is the power of faith? Is this not a way of also trying to say, when I demystify the position, I demystify the faith, and I make the faith look like any secular organization? In his novel, The Brothers Karamazov, he said there are three things that are important in creating faith. He said one is miracle, the other is authority, and the third is mystery. And if you don't have these three, then where is your belief?
Okay, I think mystery itself is part of religion. And mystery itself is seen in different ways in the church. In as much as Pope Francis has demystified, the position of the Pope and the rest, there were many things that he couldn't have demystified. The church is a mystery. And apart from the fact that the church is a mystery, one of the things that mark one of the distinctive qualities of the church is also enactment, that the church makes rules and lives by them. The church has some kind of uniformity, for example, liturgical laws and the rest of them. There are many who admire the church for that mystery that it displays to the world, for that mystery that is in the church. For example, the church has existed for the past 2025 years. That itself is a mystery, because there is no single organization in the world that has existed for this number of years. And the viability of any institution is seen in how long it has survived. Many organizations and institutions are not able to stand the test of time. The fact that the church was able to stand the test of time through ages and through generations is something that tells us that yes, the church is a mystery. It is human, and at the same time, it is divine.
All right, so we know that there's a 15 days mourning period, but already there has been talks about who will be the new pope. So my question is, what are some of the processes that will be put in place in getting a new pope?
Well, as we know, in accordance with the tradition of the church, first, there are traditional protocols that are maintained when a pope dies. First, the chair is declared vacant, and that is what the church describes in Latin as sede vacante. Second, the death of the Pope is ascertained, and then thirdly, the person who is in charge sends notification to all the cardinals around the world. Then soon after the funeral, a conclave is convened, and it is there that a Pope is elected.
Yeah, so one of the things that, because we talked about some things that he introduced to, the Catholicism, even though he didn't change the doctrine, which some people find as a way of, criticizing his stance and all of that. But what were the things that he did, which you talked about the things you agreed on, and some things you probably helped us to understand. But do you think the next Pope might want to continue in the departed, Pope, maybe some things that are introduced? For instance, it stands on women, saying that there should be more inclusion, but the women are not exactly having the roles, especially when we talk about inclusivity and all of that. Is it likely that the next Pope might reverse some of his actions?
Well, as human beings are unique, so is every leader unique. Every Pope comes with his own uniqueness. But let us not forget that each Pope is building on history. Each one is building upon blocks. So one of the things that makes the church very special is the fact that there is continuity in so many ways. There is history, and then there is continuity. There are a good number of the policies that Pope Francis began that will be continued by the other Pope. But again, we expect a Pope who will also be unique in his own way. And that is the beauty of the church.
So what are the roles of popes across the world, bishops across the world at this time of CD vacante? How do they perhaps play whatever role that they need to play at this time, especially to the people of the church who are mourning?
Okay, the role of bishops, priests, religious, and the faithful as well is to pray at this time, because we know that we're in a period of transition. We believe that through our prayers, we'll have a successful transition and then a successful election of the next Pope. We know that it is all, there are many processes involved. We pray that as Pope Francis was elected peacefully, the next Pope will be elected peacefully as well. So at this time of the transition, our main task, our main role is to continually pray for the church.
When you say peacefully, are there times when there is rancor or perhaps people not agreeing, the cardinals not agreeing to, one person's emergence as the Pope? Is that what you're saying?
Well, through history, we have had all kinds of things in the church. And that is also about the beauty of the church being human and then the church being divine. In the past, there have been some moments where the church was shaken by some kind of differences and all that. So, but we know that sometimes the human factor comes in. But we pray that the divine factor will play a more prominent role in this period of transition as well as in the election of the new Pope.
Well, there's an old saying that if you go into the Sistine Chapel a Pope, you will come out a cardinal. In other words, there is no certainty about who will become a Pope. I mean, there was a time even in papal history where there were a number of popes at the same time. Now the thing that is interesting about this is that it looks like what we have in Nigeria, where the person who is in office creates a structure that makes it possible for the person they like will take over from them. It looks like this Pope Francis, he did the same thing, because he changed the tenor of the what they call it, the college of cardinals. That more than half of them are actually like him. people, different flavors, different parts of the world, and different progressive-minded attitudes, and so on. So are we saying that he had already created an atmosphere where the majority of the votes, although they have to be 2/3 in order to get a pope, will actually be people after his own heart?
Okay, but don't forget that he was able to change some. He was able to make some changes. Yes, there is no doubt about it. He appointed those that he deemed qualified. But like we said, the church is always full of surprises, and that's the beauty of this election. Most times, people you never expect are those who emerge as new popes. And you have said it in that popular saying that anyone who goes in as a pope comes out as a cardinal. That's part of the surprise.
That's right.
Well, I also have this question. People have said a lot about the fact that this pope was kind of transformational. Nobody can look at it in concrete terms. Can you compare the Pope John Paul II and impact he had, because his own impact seemed to be more political and even to some extent cultural? Can you compare him with the tenure of Pope Francis? Because Pope John Paul is known to have done many, many things, that he brought down big government. If we talk about principalities and powers on this earth, Pope John Paul II actually had a hand in bringing them down. How would you compare both of them?
There is no doubt about it that Pope John Paul II had this massive influence, and a distinctive quality that he had was reaching out to all parts of the world. But don't forget also that when he was elected, age was also on his side. He was elected at about the age of 58. Yes. Pope Francis was elected at the age of 76. So you can see that the energy, cannot be compared. And then Pope John Paul II had a longer papacy and effected so many changes in the church. Pope John Paul II papacy was twice as many years as that of Pope Francis. So we have so many encyclicals that he wrote. We have so many things that he put down for us. We have so many legacies that he left. But again, there were also angles that Pope Francis brought into the church. There are also some contributions that are very unique to Pope Francis himself.
Okay, right now we have a lot of eyes and questions on the Ghanaian Cardinal, Peter Turkson. Quickly, I just want to know, what is your take on that? Because a lot of comments on social media keep indicating that he may just become Pope.
Yes, anyone who is eligible may become Pope. Everyone. We have so many. At this time, people make permutations. At this time, there are many speculations. That has always been the case. People say this person is likely to be, that person is likely to be. People have their favorites. People have the ones that they wish, could be Pope. As we are wishing for Turkson, as many people are wishing for Turkson to be Pope, there are also those who are wishing for some cardinals in Asia, in Latin America, in Europe or America, or any part of the world to be Pope. So anyone who is eligible could be Pope, including Turkson, Cardinal Turkson.
Well, so based on what I read online regarding the selection of new Pope, they said that people under 80, about 120 of them would do the selection, or would do the election. And as of April 2025, they said there is 130. Now, should we begin to look at younger Pope versus older Pope, who are 80, so that we'll have them make more influence, just like as you alluded to Pope John Paul? Should we have younger persons, running the papacy rather than, people that are of age?
Okay, that could be a consideration. But as we said, there are many considerations, when one is considered as a papabile, as it is called in Italian. There are many qualifications. It's not only about age. There are other things that people look at. The contribution the person has made to the church, as well as the stand of that person regarding faith and morals. So it's not only about age, it's also about contribution that people have made to the development of the church. Age is only one among many.
All right. And quickly, your final message of hope to members of the Roman Catholic Church around the world that are watching us this morning, what your message would be to them in this crucial time of mourning.
Yeah, at this crucial time of mourning, there are two things that we must keep in mind. One is we must reflect on the legacy left by Pope Francis. Two, we must continue to pray for the repose of his soul. Then, if we may add again, we should also pray for a smooth transition and a successful election of the next Pope.
All right, and that's a fine place to leave the conversation. We must thank you, Gerald Musa, Bishop, Catholic Diocese of Katsina, for your time on the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And still ahead on the program, we'll stay with developments following the death of Pope Francis at the age of 88. Join us after the break for more.